toys yesterday, and I went in to get two specific things, and I did get those things, but I also saw in a pile of board games this box, and I said to myself, that is not a board game. I know what that is. I have been half thinking about this on and off of late, because I've been doing a little eBay trawl of late, but I had not gone into the shop thinking I'm going to look for Robotix. And of course, in not looking for it, what do I do but trip across this set? And absolute memoriesville for me. I had some of the good guy white sets. This chap is apparently the enemy second in command who eventually takes over. There was a cartoon basically that supported these toys, and even stranger was the fact that I've been looking at other Milton Bradley produced toys of late, and this comes from the early 80s, and it is a construction set, and a little bit like Zoids in the sense that it has a motor and it has an action figure that sits in the cockpit, but a little bit like Zoids as well, actually, I suppose, as well. The entity as a whole is supposed to have a personality as well, but the idea was that when combined with a human pilot, it enabled the sort of more alien entity, the Robotix entity, Tyrannix, to shift to different configurations which weren't possible without having a pilot at the controls. And this was the same for the good guys, who were coloured more of a sort of a white greyish colour scheme. The bad guys were black, and so this is him. And to my amazement, I put new batteries into his motor, and lo and behold, he still works, which is just remarkable. And it closes up and stops. So after all this time, must be a good getting on for 40 years old. You can still put absolutely standard AA batteries into his motor and it will work. And the motor can drive, so this motor is attached to his pincers, but the motor underneath can be attached to wheels and anything else you want basically, and will drive them. So there are all sorts of alternative models in the set that you can then create off the back of that. And let me show you the back of the box briefly there. Oops, upside down, nicely played. So there are the sort of big stand-up model there that you can make, and there are loads and loads of suggestions. And this, to my surprise, this set is absolutely bob-on complete, aside from the actual figure. You can see down here, ironically, it's actually got his backpack is still in there and his gun, but it hasn't actually got the figure. So sadly, it's the one thing that this one lacks. But given that Gareth at Cosmic Toys gave it to me for sort of tuppence, because I was buying other stuff at the same time, I'm really not going to complain about that. And both he and I were quite amazed to see just how complete the set seems to be. It's even got these stalks that some of the pieces came on in it. So I'll just show you what it consists of, so you can get a sort of an idea of scale. We'll put the box down. The box is slightly the worst for wear, but it's not too bad. So you get a decent sort of assembly guide, and this is the sort of the scope of it. So it outlines what you get in it basically. So you've got a label sheet, power droid, it calls it, a capsule and a motor, and those are really the core components of any of the Robotix machines. But you've got a drive axle and a gear, got a couple of wheels, you've got the pincer there that I've just shown you that works, a couple of half cylinders, you can make a full cylinder, 50mm arms, solar panels, rocket pods. And I remember these rocket pods because they seem a lot smaller now, but for me growing up, having that sort of piece of kit, I mean, Lego weren't doing anything like that. So this is it's hexagonal base. These interconnectors that you can see here on the end of this rocket thruster. So it gives you a number of different geometry options when you're connecting them all together. So you do have a lot of playability options. It's got sort of satellite dishes, you've got guns in there, various different connectors, and you can see here that they go to. I'm not going to bother actually making one up now, but you can see there's a really good collection of different options for you to try and build yourself. And in fact, interestingly, after a while they stopped showing you the instructions, and then they just sort of switch over to telling you maybe you could build this, and it gives you the pieces you need, but it doesn't actually tell you how to do it, which I think is actually quite clever, because it encourages you to explore by yourself what might be possible with the set, which I think is giving kids a lot of credit actually, because the type of kid who might buy this is probably going to be fairly competent and want to be able to create their own stuff. And you can see on the back there, those the sort of, I remember these, you can see this one here with the jaws. I loved those jaws. So these jaws were sort of open and shut like that, and they were great. So you could build things like that look like Zoids or Tyrannosaurus Rexes or Godzilla or whatever you want, really. All sorts of different options. So really, really clever idea. And this was back in the very early 80s. And in fact, Gareth put me onto this in a sense, because he noted that Milton Bradley once did Transformers for a little while. And as it turns out, Milton Bradley actually got absorbed into Hasbro. But at this point in time, they were still their own independent company. And I bought a few things off eBay of late, which I'll show you in due course when they arrive, which will highlight just how good Milton Bradley actually were at sort of solid toys, not just the board games, which you might be more familiar with. And you can see there the number of sort of hexagonal connectors that you get on them gives you a lot of different options. It reminds me a little bit of Britain Space, which I think I've shown to you before, because Britain Space gave that sort of ability to build up from component parts. So you've got sort of solar panels, you've got little thruster pods there, so that's detachable. Various interconnector types. So it's all just here, and I say all of this seems a little bit small in it. Some of it's still quite dusty as well, but it doesn't need to wipe down. It's absolutely fine. It was really sturdy plastic. It was well put together. And then you've got these quite sort of rugged wheels, and the tyre tracks are still absolutely fine on it. So the idea was that you would do something like this. So you get your two half cylinders out like that, and you just link them together like that. But they don't actually link together themselves. But once you attach them to a tyre, you can then form them up into an overall cylinder effect, like so. And then obviously you can then use something to drive. So you put a motor on that end there, and you can drive it. So you have an axle or whatever, and then you can actually drive it and power the wheels. You can actually get a mobile vehicle off the back of it. So it's got they have a lot of options to them. And for me, it was one of those sort of toys that was not. I don't know how many they sold, but they obviously had the typical sort of toy tie-in to try and sell them. I'm just going to try and disconnect some of these so I can show you the sort of thing that you could do with it. So for example, here you got a sort of T-junction piece, and I would just do this sort of thing with it. He says, if you can actually disconnect it, which you probably can't. There we go. So, I mean, this is the sort of kit, I suppose, that doesn't really get. I don't know that anyone really builds things like this anymore, because of course Lego has taken over so much of this stuff. But what I loved about this was it looks like a lot of sort of detailing that you would get from this sort of the 70s, 80s sci-fi shows. You can start to build up ships and stuff like that, you see. So I loved that because that does look like every other sort of, you know, rocket booster going ever, basically. And then I can then just slap another wheel on the front of it to give it some rigidity. And then I can't actually do that direct. That's a shame. I thought I could. Oh yeah, I can now actually. After a fashion anyway. Should have done a blue piece on this, shouldn't I, really? But anyway. Oops. So now I've got a very cack-handed spaceship, but you can see, you know, that was the sort of thing you could do. I mean, that's a terrible example, but you know, you could then attach the solar panels to that, and if you had other sets in the series, of course, you could build up much bigger ships and creatures and, you know, all the rest of it. Because of course, once you had more than one pincer, you then had two arms, and you know, you do have something that looks more like an upset Tyrannosaurus Rex. So it's really clever piece of kit, and this was only one of the smaller ones. I mean, I seem to remember there being a much bigger one than this, which would have come with more parts, of course. But you know, you've got the little sort of RCS thrusters there that you can just sort of put on the side. It just lets your imagination go, and yeah, I mean, it's great. I think the box is really beautifully presented as well. It's really distinctive, and they chose a really great model to put on the front of it. So I just can't fault it, and for the amount I haven't paid for that, it's rather lovely to to see it again and be able to sort of mess around with one again. So I'm sure they're available on eBay and elsewhere. And as I say, ironically, I was not even looking for this. I mean, I've still got unused stickers sheet with it as well, which is crazy at its age. But it's that's definitely in with it. So really can't knock the condition it came in at all for its age. Remarkable. If you do happen to be in Dewsbury, do pop into the store, because it is like an Aladdin's cave in there, and at the moment it looks like a Godzilla invasion has occurred. So if you're at all into Godzilla, do go and have a look at Cosmic Toys at the moment, because not everything is necessarily on the website all the time, so it's often worth physically going in. So do that as well. But yeah, some great stuff in there, and it is a real sort of. I mean, I must have been in there for a good hour and a half. I think I was probably sick of the sight of me, although I did swell his coffers quite nicely, so I'm sure he didn't mind too much. But anyway, I will do some more videos of the other things I actually went in for in due course. But for now, I shall leave you there. Cheers. Bye.